Without embarrassing him too much, be nice to Mark Livonia. His mother and grandmother are here with us today, and we've just had a conversation about whether or not it was appropriate for me to introduce them. He said no, so needless to say, I would not do that. Anyways, good afternoon. This is a serious subject. Let me begin by saying, like so many New Yorkers, our thoughts and prayers have been with the people of Washington, D.C. since the horrific shooting at the Navy Yard on Monday, especially with those who were injured and families who lost loved ones. We don't have all the facts about the shooter, but what we do know, what happened this week has happened before, and sadly it looks like it will happen again until we get serious about the issue of just too many guns around. Since 2012, our nation has endured mass shootings in Pittsburgh, Miami, Oakland, Tulsa, Seattle, Wilmington, Aurora, Milwaukee, at Texas A&M, in Minneapolis, Brookfield, Portland, and of course Newtown, Connecticut, where 20 children and 6 faculty members were gunned down at the Sandy Hook Elementary School. The fact that those in Washington continue to stand by as innocent victims, children, parents, neighbors, and friends are gunned down, and continue to place the interests of criminals over the lives of law-abiding citizens is a national disgrace, and it just has to come to an end. Here in New York, we've passed some of the most comprehensive gun laws in the country. No state has a tougher mandatory minimum prison sentence for criminals who possess illegal guns. But as we discussed last month when I announced the largest gun bust in the city's history, an operation that seized some 250 weapons that had been funneled here from North and South Carolina, weak gun laws at the federal and state levels have a direct, dangerous, and growing impact on the safety of people in our city and every city in America. Faced with inaction from leaders in Congress and in some state legislatures, our administration has pursued a concerted and coordinated effort to crack down on illegal firearms, efforts that combine tough legislation, innovative litigation, and smart, proactive policing. Those efforts have helped drive murder and shootings down to record lows here in New York City. But we know that local action is not enough. We also need national leadership, and that's why Boston Mayor Tom Menino and I formed Mayors Against Illegal Guns back in 2006. Since then, it has grown from 15 to more than 1,000 mayors representing both major political parties in every region of the country. And that includes 650 mayors who have joined our coalition in just the last year. The coalition has pushed for common-sense gun reforms in Washington and around the country. It has shed light on the trafficking market that fuels the supply of illegal guns. That market includes what has become an increasingly prevalent and dangerous problem: illegal gun sales via the Internet. Almost 2 years ago, our administration conducted the first nationwide investigation of illegal online gun sales by private individuals who are not licensed gun dealers. Our investigators made phone calls to private gun sellers in 14 states who had advertised weapons for sale on 10 websites, 5 of which accounted for the great majority of the firearms listings that we saw. That investigation found that 62% of the gun sellers we contacted, who were told by an inspector that he probably couldn't pass a background check, disregarded federal law and agreed to sell the guns to the investigators anyway. That investigation was of gun sellers. Today, we're announcing the results of the first ever national investigation into online gun buyers conducted by Mayors Against Illegal Guns. In the digital age, convicted felons, domestic abusers, and other dangerous people who are legally barred from buying guns can do so online with little more than a phone number or email address. And as our investigation shows, thousands of criminals and other prohibited purchasers are doing exactly that. In fact, not only are criminals buying guns online, they're doing so brazenly by openly advertising that they want to buy them. Our investigation examined online postings listings between February and May of this year at the popular website armlist.com, the Craigslist for national gun sales. We examined only ads posted by those wanting to buy guns, not those wanting to sell guns. We then used the phone numbers and email addresses that some of these would-be buyers voluntarily posted in their public ads and used them to conduct criminal record checks on these people. And what we found was alarming. 1 in 30 of these would-be buyers had criminal records that barred them from owning guns. And as this chart to my left shows, if 1 in 30 people on a Boeing 747 were on a terrorist watch list, that plane would have 22 suspected terrorists on it, something no passenger or airline would tolerate and something that Washington should not tolerate either. In the past, we've seen what can happen when dangerous loopholes allow criminals to have easy access to guns. Just last year, a judge issued a restraining order against Radcliffe Hawthorne of Wisconsin to protect his wife, Zena Daniel. That order prohibited him from buying firearms. So he turned to Arms List, where he found a nearby seller who sold him a .40 caliber semi-automatic Glock handgun with no background check. Tragically, Mr. Hawthorne then used that gun the very next day when he drove to Ms. Daniels' workplace, murdered her and 2 of her coworkers, and injured 4 others before turning the gun on himself. When you consider that Arms List will host some 800,000 unique firearms ads this year, including many that are completely anonymous, our investigation makes clear that we can safely estimate that more than 25,000 guns may be transferred to criminals each year through Arms List alone. And that is on one website. There are dozens and dozens of sites that sell weapons. Individuals looking for guns on Arms List are also nearly 4 times more likely to have prohibiting criminal records than buyers at licensed dealers that require background checks. Now keep in mind, our investigation covered only those people proactively posting ads wanting to buy guns. If 1 in 30 people posting their contact information in ads wanting to buy guns are criminals prohibited from buying guns illegally, think how many criminals are answering want to sell ads, which they can do so with complete anonymity. This investigation has just scratched the surface of the Internet's vast illegal gun market. And if nothing is done, that market will continue to grow. The widespread disregard for the law that our investigation revealed demonstrates the need to take 3 immediate and critical steps. First, federal law should require a background check for every gun sale, not just those involving licensed dealers. In more than 40 states, criminals and other prohibited purchasers can avoid background checks by buying handguns or long guns from unlicensed, quote, private sellers, unquote, often at gun shows or through anonymous online transactions. These private sellers are not required by federal law to conduct background checks. As a result, an estimated 6.6 million guns are sold or transferred each year with no background check and no questions asked. Bipartisan legislation pending in both chambers of Congress, sponsored in the Senate by Joe Manchin and Pat Toomey, and in the House of Representatives by Pete King and Mike Thompson, would close this gaping loophole. Second, it's critical that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the federal agency responsible for enforcing gun laws, investigate online sales and enforce existing laws. The ATF should also create an online training video explaining the federal laws governing online gun sales. And this would be similar to the online training videos ATF has produced for licensed gun dealers and the general public. Third, and finally, websites should develop and enforce policies that deter illegal gun sales. I think most Americans would agree that online retailers should meet the same public safety standards that we've come to expect in the brick-and-mortar marketplace. For example, when Fisher-Price received 600 complaints this year that parents were concerned about mold on one of their sleepers for newborns, the company recalled 800,000 models. That represents a 1 in 1,333 risk. Significant, but far less than the 1 in 30 risk that we all face from a criminal purchasing a weapon through one of the most popular websites for gun sales. And at a minimum, all websites that facilitate gun sales should require buyers and sellers to provide verified personal information about themselves before they can complete transactions. The website should also add features to alert website administrators of suspicious behavior. All of these steps would go a long ways towards ending the kind of disturbing practices our investigation uncovered. And they might well prevent more needless bloodshed and loss of life in our city and nation. On that note, let me turn the floor over to our Criminal Justice Coordinator, who helped spearhead our coalition of Mayors Against Illegal Guns and who directed this report, John Feinblatt. John?
Thank you, Mayor. To echo the Mayor's sentiments, our hearts certainly go out to the survivors and those who lost family members in Washington, D.C. this past week. Unfortunately, this sort of senseless violence has tragically become all too common. It's almost something that people have come to expect. 33 people are murdered with guns every day in America, and while it's true that we absolutely cannot prevent every shooting, we do know that closing the gaping loopholes in our background check system will save lives. Today's report really gives us a frightening glimpse into the magnitude of the online illegal marketplace, and a quick snapshot of some of the prohibited buyers identified in our investigations shows how lethal the marketplace can be. Their histories include charges of illegal possession of guns, domestic assaults, protection order violations, and robberies with dangerous weapons, all factors that prohibit them under federal law from buying a handgun. For instance, one man in Louisiana who promised in his ad cash in hand had been charged with aggravated assault with a firearm 1 month earlier and illegally carrying a weapon just 2 days before his posting. 1 month after his posting, he received a third charge, this time for domestic abuse. Each of these offenses alone was enough to disqualify him from possessing firearms. There's just nothing theoretical about this study. We know criminals use the internet with deadly consequences. In 2011, for instance, nyc.gov was walking to her car in Oak Brook, Illinois, when she was gunned down by a stalker. Even though he was prohibited from purchasing a gun under federal law, he got a .40 caliber Glock on armslist.com, where he evaded a background check, no questions asked. And just as it's not theoretical that criminals buy guns on the internet, it's just not theoretical that background checks can save lives. Since its creation in 1998, the National Instant Background Check system has blocked more than 2 million gun sales to criminals and to other prohibited purchasers. And we know that in states that have taken it upon themselves to require universal background checks, there are 39% fewer law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty with guns, there are 49% fewer suicides with guns, and there are 38% fewer women shot to death by their intimate partners. As shocking as today's findings are, we know it's just the tip of the iceberg. Arms List is just one of thousands of internet sites selling guns in an industry that's growing geometrically. And since many criminals who post want to buy ads leave a trail of emails and phone numbers, it's safe to say that most felons anonymously search other people's ads rather than take out their own. In 2011, our investigators tested whether online private sellers would sell guns to people who they thought couldn't pass a background check. But today's investigation, today's findings aren't a test. It's the real thing. We found actual felons, actual domestic abusers buying guns illegally on the internet. Until Congress fixes the background check system, criminals will continue to exploit weak laws to arm themselves, and our police officers will continue to recover illegal guns at crime scenes abandoned near the bodies of the dead. Thank you.
John, thank you. The findings of our investigation are described in the report, Felon Seeks Firearm, No Strings Attached, which is available here today and also online at the city's website, nyc.gov. Let me just, before taking questions, summarize for our Spanish-speaking New Yorkers. Los resultados de una nueva investigación nacional demuestran que más de 25,000 armas son compradas en línea por criminales cada año, gracias a la laguna legislativa en cuanto a ventas privadas de armas que pone en riesgo nuestras comunidades. And with that, es hora que el Congreso y las autoridades federales toman acciones. With that, we take some questions. Sir, just please identify who you are.
Matt Piper, News 12. I know this was a national investigation, but any idea how many people here in New York City may have gotten these guns off of a website like this? How many?
I don't know. It's any ways to tell.
No, it's impossible to know. What this documented is that it's easy to do it. Criminals are doing it. We don't know how many in New York actually are buying off the web.
But you could go on the website and look at the ads, and a lot of them have addresses. So that's what you should do this afternoon. I mean, you can get the information. You might have to do a bit of work to do it, but you can. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor,
Why don't you just identify yourself, please? Just ask everybody to do it. It's courtesy.
Hunter Walker, Talking Points Memo. I know you're sort of heading out of City Hall in January. Will you be staying involved with mayors?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My kids and I live in this country, and we want to be safe, and we certainly aren't going to walk away from this. Yes, sir.
You all going in with the New York Post. Just to be clear, do you believe the website is doing anything illegal, or are they just kind of...
The website has a right to carry ads. I'm not sure I would want to be in that business, but that's my personal view. But as far as we can tell, there's nothing illegal what they're doing. It's the transactions that take place. Yes, miss?
Marcia Kramer, WCBS TV. I'm wondering, I would imagine some of the people who post the ads and who buy ads are from New York City. Is there anything that New York City or state can do to go after the people who are from our city or state?
Well, unless they buy something, there's no crime. So I don't know how our problem is finding out when they buy it. I don't know how you'd find out. But the issue really, it's illegal to sell. I guess it's not really illegal to buy.
No, I mean, if they're a prohibited purchaser and they consummated the transaction, then it would be illegal, but we have no way of knowing when they consummated it, if they consummated it, and where they consummated it.
Sir?
Henry Gold with Bloomberg News. Have you discussed these findings with Vice President Biden?
No, I've not. We keep them posted?
We've kept them posted, so the Vice President's office is aware of these findings. ATF, we obviously sent the report to. We've put in a call to ATF, and we'll brief them completely on the findings. And there's some things that they can do, just like we did. Certainly ATF can do the kinds of stings that we did and try to actually understand the marketplace, as we have. And there's things that the websites can do. I mean, the mayor's correct. I don't think that they did anything illegal, but there are things that websites do to make their practices safer, require registration so that there isn't this, so the anonymity doesn't protect people who are trying to buy, who shouldn't be buying. They can have ways of other people on the website reporting suspicious activity. And certainly the ultimate thing that we should be doing is passing background checks in Washington.
But you've got no indication from the administration that they're going to do more to enforce?
We're going to brief them and go through it with them. I don't have any indication one way or the other.
Yes, Miss?
Dana Rubenstein.
All right, so just in front of you first, and then you.
Jen Camino with the Daily News. So one of your suggestions was you want the ATF to start doing like an investigation like you did. Are they not doing anything like this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
So is the ATF, they're not doing anything like this? They're not really doing these stings on the websites like the mayors against illegal guns did?
We are going to brief them on exactly what they did. They do investigations. As you know, they finally, for the first time in history, got a permanent director. And I think that as a result of that, we're going to see probably much more focus than we've seen in the past. One thing that we should be clear about is how much of an undercount we think this probably is. First of all, most felons would not take out a want-to-buy ad, and if they did take out a want-to-buy ad, they wouldn't actually post their own email and their own phone number. They could actually take out a want-to-buy ad and actually do the transactions through the portal of the arms list or another website without revealing their identity. Second of all, we just looked at, did they have a criminal record in the state that they were advertising from and where they currently live? They clearly could have had criminal records in other states. And thirdly, we only looked at one prohibiting factor, which would be criminality. There are other prohibiting factors that would prevent them from legally owning a firearm.
Yes, Miss, I'm sorry.
Dana Rubenstein, Capital New York. Given the successful recall effort in Colorado and also Senator Harry Reid's comments after the Navy Yard shooting that there still aren't enough votes for gun control, what do you think has to happen to actually turn the tide?
Well, number one, I think it's fair to say that we are making a lot of progress in Colorado rather than being a loss. Sadly, it was the loss for two of the senators of their jobs, but in terms of helping the people of Colorado, it was a big win. 19 senators stood up to the special interest pressures and voted to pass a gun background check on all gun sales. Instead of challenging all of the members that voted for the bill, you should note that the NRA picked out 4 of the most vulnerable who were sort of in swing districts and tried to mount a recall effort against them. They failed to get enough signatures for 2 of the 4. The other 4, they did get enough signatures. That left 2 cherry-picked races that went, including one against someone who was term limited and leaving office in 3 months anyways. And they funded a major campaign to go after them. And so, as I said before, we're going to stand up for people who are willing to stand up to the gun lobby and to pass intelligent laws that keep guns away from criminals. And those senators did, and we supported them. I think it's fair to say the opponents threw the kitchen sink at them because they sensed that they were in very vulnerable situations, and only 2 of the 19. They threw the sink at them, accused them of everything from Obamacare to civil unions to driver's license for undocumented immigrants. I mean, it was every single argument that they could get to stir up dissension against them. It was not just on guns, although that's the way the NRA phrased it. And these were teeny tiny elections. Something like 50,000 people out of 5 million in the state voted. So it was not a lot. And incidentally, the will of the people of Colorado, who strongly supported in every poll these background checks and opposed these recalls, just what happened there did not reflect the will of the people of Colorado. And in the midst of all this coverage about the recall, people seem to forget the most important thing. The truth of the matter is, in Colorado, the NRA lost. We got the law passed, and it's the law of Colorado. And it helps the citizens of Colorado, but because you can buy guns and transport them easily across borders, all the other 49 states of this country are better off. And I think thanks to the Colorado governor, those senators, and a broad coalition of people in Colorado, gun sales in Colorado have background checks now, which will help keep guns out of the hands of criminals, and they're going to save lives. So, the NRA can paint it any ways they want, but the truth of the matter is the laws were passed by a majority, and the vast majority of the people in Colorado are in favor of them. Miss.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Isolda Pereira from Telemundo Network. As you mentioned, we have been seeing so many mass shootings in this country, countless of victims. Do you believe that this country is condemned to live under this mass shootings constantly unless Congress acts immediately?
Well, unless Congress does something, yes, because I suppose if all 50 states passed their local state laws to require background checks for criminal records and mental illness, then you wouldn't need the federal laws. But if any one state does not have it because it's so easy to carry guns from one to another, you really do need the federal laws to be updated. And remember, we have background checks at a federal level for gun shows, for sales in gun stores. And the vast majority of owners and people who work in those gun stores follow the law. There's something like 2 million times people were denied the right to buy a gun because they had a background check failure. And so it does work. And in fact, if you go to the 14 states, I think it's 14, maybe 15 now, where the state closed the internet and gun show loophole and required background checks on all gun sales for criminal records and for mental illness. The suicide rate in all of those states, every single one of them, is half the national average. And it's because there's just a lot fewer guns in the street. And suicide, sadly, is one of those generally spur-of-the-moment things where people try to get a gun. If they can't, then they don't commit suicide. So,
as a follow-up, do you think we are at a stage of an emergency, given the...
I think the answer to that question is you should try to arrange an interview with a family member of somebody who was killed. And I suspect what they would say is, we've been at that state for a long time. Please bring me back my loved one, which is one thing we cannot do. Yes, in the back, sir.
Mayor, Jim Hoffman from Channel 7. I was wondering about your reaction when you were briefed on the findings of this investigation.
It's more of the same. It's just not surprising because you know that there's an awful lot of these transactions. I guess the big surprise to me was that people would actually, with criminal records, would have the audacity to put their phone number and email address go on the record, if you will. They just must feel that there's no enforcement and there's not going to be any enforcement. And it's a sad commentary about that. Yes, sir.
Campbell with the New York Observer. Mr. Mayor, you're calling for federal action here. Do you feel like you're tilting out the windmills?
No.
I mean, if 12 murders in Washington, D.C.'s backyard doesn't, shock them into action, what hope can this...
Oh, I think Gabby Giffords was even more. It was one of them, and it didn't stir them. But keep in mind, most of the Democrats and some of the Republicans are willing to do it. We're not that far away. And I think in the House, if you brought up a bill, if it could ever get it brought to the floor, it would pass with a very big majority from both parties. Is it tilting at windmills? No. But let's assume it is. What are we supposed to do? Walk away? I think if you asked once again the survivors, should we walk away? I don't think you'd get very many people saying yes. In the back, sir.
Hi, John Sirico with the Wall Street Journal. I was just wondering if the mayors against legal guns have any plans for the midterm elections in terms of campaigning.
Oh, it's a long time between now and then, but I certainly plan to support those people who want to make this country safe. I will. There's a lot of different issues, and you can't just pick and choose on only one issue, unfortunately. We have a lot of things facing this country. Immigration reform. We're going to destroy this country. We're going to destroy our economy unless we get immigration reform. There are industries being formed overseas, the jobs moving overseas. We've got to do something about that. Guns is another one. But fiscal responsibility, there are a lot of different things. But certainly guns are one of the things that I think gets to the point where it can easily be a single issue. And I've said that to some senators. If you support this, I will support you. I might not agree with you on anything else, but this is the safety of the people of New York, the safety of the people of America. And I will be willing to overlook the other stuff in the interest of this. So Scott Brown, incidentally, who the voters of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts did not reelect. Scott Brown single-handedly kept a federal law from being passed that would have permitted everybody to carry a gun without any license whatsoever. And I thought the voters of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where I come from, should have recognized that and and reelected him and said thank you. I can't think of anything, and it took a lot of courage for a Republican senator from up there who was in a basically Democratic state, or certainly a swing state, to take a very difficult vote, and yet he did it. And Any
The concealed carry reciprocity. So that
yeah, so and he said there are states that don't have it, so anybody could carry a gun. That's what I said. Yes.
Mayor Rich Lamb, WCBS. If it is not presently illegal for a prohibited buyer to advertise that he wants to buy a gun, would a law help? Should there be a law?
I don't even know whether that would be constitutional.
Yeah, I think the way to solve this is for background checks, and they would be detected. For instance, when a prohibited purchaser tries to buy a gun from a licensed dealer, they're turned down, and that happens, a little bit of 1% of the time. What's interesting is that what we found was 4 times that rate of prohibited purchasers trying to buy guns on arms list, and that's logical because they think that's a smarter place to go undetected. But the way to do it is by imposing background checks, and those people are caught when they go to licensed dealers who, under federal law, have to perform background checks, and they are denied the ability to do it.
I think the real issue here, what is important to remember is 99% of the gun dealers follow the law, and it is hardly onerous. They would tell you it takes a few seconds. It's computer, doesn't cost them much in time or anything. They don't lose very many sales, but it does, as you can see it in the states that expanded the background checks to include internet and gun show sales, it really does reduce the number of guns on the streets, and that reduces both the suicide rate and the murder rate. Yes, Miss?
Courtney Gross with New York One. Did the investigation include any follow-up to see whether or not these would-be gun buyers actually were able to purchase a gun?
I don't know how you do it.
There's no way to really do that to find out whether it was consummated or not. So, no, what we did was we took a snapshot over a 3-month period, and that's the way we were able to show the 1 in 30 and estimate that at minimum there are 25,000 prohibited purchasers who are felons and domestic abusers trying to buy guns on the internet.
Let me give you another answer to that question. If it didn't work, people wouldn't do it. So if there's 800,000 postings looking to buy guns, that it must be because the word on the street is that that's the way to find a gun. Yes, sir?
Did any of those postings say whether or not they'd be picked up or mailed, or was there any determination?
Generally what happens is that the two people, buyer and seller, arrange a place to meet, and that's where the transaction's done. In fact, if you look at the internet report we issued 2 years ago, we actually documented those transactions and those meeting places, and that's why it's logical to impose a background check, because they're going to meet somewhere. And what we determined during the spring was that 98.4% of Americans live within 10 miles of a licensed dealer. So the logical thing is, once they meet on the internet, is to do the transaction at a gun dealer who can do the background check within a minute or two.
Let me also point out that you got to question the people who are putting these ads and buying these guns sanity, because, and I remember going to 2 funerals for 2 detectives who were killed in a buy and bust operation here in New York City. The guy selling the gun knows that the guy who wants to buy the gun has cash. And too many times you'd think they'd just shoot him, take the cash, and not sell the gun. Yes, last question, Rich.
Rich Lamb, WCBS. Do we have any idea of what the proportion is of internet sales compared to or contrasted to sales in shops? What percentage of gun sales is there any way to know?
So look, in the same way that you once didn't buy clothes on the internet and now you do, we know that this market is growing tremendously. 14 years ago, a Department of Justice study showed that there were 4,000 sites that were selling guns on the internet. That, I think, study was done 3 months after Google was invented. So if it was 4,000 sites 14 years ago, you can just imagine what it is like today. Arms list, nearly 800,000 internet ads per year. Do the multiplication. It's an enormous, growing, unregulated market.
Let me just try to summarize. This is a study of buyers. We did a study of sellers. What we do know is that the federal government so far has been, or Congress has been unwilling to act. The president has finally, with Congress's approval, got a director for ATF. That's progress. The president has spoken out, and he's charged Vice President Biden with leading the charge, and they have been very helpful. We've worked with a lot of senators on both sides of the aisle who are in favor of protecting the people of this country, at the same time protecting the rights of gun owners. And so far, we've not been able to get enough. We've got a majority, but we don't have enough votes to pass the bill in Senate. And then you'd have to go to Congress where, if it were brought up, and my hope is that there'd be enough pressure from the public to bring it up, the polls say it would pass with a good-sized margin. But every day, this year, 12,000 Americans will get killed with illegal handguns. 19,000 will commit suicide with illegal handguns. There is no other country in the developed world that has a problem remotely of this magnitude with guns. We are the only one. Thank you.